What if the thing that comforts you most is the same thing that quietly enslaves you? There is a fire burning beneath your distractions, a silent war taking place every time you scroll, binge, or plug in to relax. You think you're resting, but what if you're actually being subdued? What if your desire for comfort has become a leash? This isn't science fiction anymore, it's now. And the terrifying part? Ray Bradbury saw all of it coming. First published in 1953, Fahrenheit 451 tells the story of Guy Montag, a fireman not tasked with putting out fires, but with starting them by burning books. In Bradbury's dystopian world, society has willingly surrendered its curiosity, depth, and critical thought in exchange for constant entertainment and shallow comfort. Books are illegal not because of an oppressive regime, but because people no longer want them. Truth has become too heavy, thinking too inconvenient, and so citizens turn to massive wall-sized screens, endless chatter, and shallow pleasures to keep themselves numb. Montag's journey, from obedient enforcer to disillusioned rebel, is less about rebellion against government and more about awakening from apathy. Fahrenheit 451 wasn't just a book about censorship or burning literature. It was an autopsy of our future. Bradbury wasn't warning us about authoritarian regimes marching in with guns. He was warning us about the kind of tyranny we invite in with open arms. The tyranny of passivity, of overstimulation, of screens that lull us into obedience with every swipe. Here's the question we must confront. What happens to a society that trades truth for stimulation? You think you're free. You choose your content. You customize your playlists. You swipe through personalized feeds. But Bradbury already understood this illusion. In his world, people weren't forced to surrender their thoughts. They volunteered them. They didn't scream as books were burned. They laughed. They didn't resist censorship. They welcomed it because it came dressed in pleasure, in ease, in numbness. In his words, you don't have to burn books to destroy a culture. Just get people to stop reading them. And now take a hard look around you. At the earbuds, the endless shows, the viral distractions, the curated dopamine. You're not in control of your mind. You're being entertained into obedience. The most haunting part of Fahrenheit 451 wasn't the firemen or the burning books. It was the people themselves. Hollowed-out shells, detached from reality, sedated by constant noise. No deep conversations, no uncomfortable truths, no time to think, just noise, pleasant, constant noise. Walls turned into interactive screens, cars that moved too fast to see anything. Advertisements blasted through every channel. A world built not to inform you, but to distract you from yourself. You might believe you're smarter than that. You read, you watch documentaries, you scroll smart content. But Bradbury's prediction wasn't about ignorance. It was about surrender. The dangerous kind. The kind you don't feel when it happens. You don't need to be dumb to be controlled. You only need to be busy. And the more connected you are, the easier it is to disconnect from what actually matters. Here's where it gets darker. In Fahrenheit 451, the character Mildred, Montag's wife, spends her days watching the parlor walls, gigantic interactive screens that speak to her more intimately than her own husband. She forgets how they met. She attempts suicide without even realizing why. She's not alive, she's occupied. And that's the true horror Bradbury foresaw. A generation not of slaves in chains, but slaves in comfort, so immersed in entertainment that they forgot what it meant to be conscious. Sound familiar? Because you are living in Mildred's world now, except the screens are smaller, more portable, more addictive. They fit in your pocket. They whisper to you all day. They learn from you. They imitate your desires, reflect your fears, reward your laziness, and worst of all, they convince you that you're making choices. You're not. You are being chosen, and the cost isn't just time. It's depth, it's awareness, it's freedom. Because every time you reach for your screen in a moment of boredom, you are missing something critical, that silence, that discomfort, that inconvenient emotion, the very thing that might lead you to truth. You're skipping the pain, but pain is the gatekeeper of insight. And so you drift, eyes wide open, asleep. This is the new form of slavery, voluntary, comfortable, profitable for those who sell it, devastating for those who consume it. And here lies Bradbury's true warning: we are being kept from ourselves. Because you can't become dangerous, truly free, until you reclaim the ability to sit in silence, to think for yourself, to question the narrative, to bore yourself into brilliance. But no one wants that. The system doesn't want that. Your impulses don't want that. It's too easy, too pleasant to stay distracted. But here's the paradox. The more you entertain yourself, the more you forget who you are. Have you noticed that? That eerie emptiness after hours of stimulation? That vague dissatisfaction that follows the binge? It's not an accident. It's the echo of your neglected self, the version of you that is starving for meaning but being fed with noise. Bradbury wasn't telling us to fear fire. He was telling us to fear comfort. Comfort without questioning. Comfort that numbs the pain rather than heals the source. Entertainment that pacifies instead of provokes. So the question is no longer, are we being controlled? It's, have we become willing prisoners of our own pleasure? You think control needs to look like force. But Bradbury understood the new kind of control, one that's seductive, invisible, internal. A control that speaks softly and smiles. That gives you what you want until you forget what you need. And that's why you're afraid of boredom, because boredom forces you to face the quiet voice inside. The one that's been drowned in a sea of noise. But that voice, it's the only one that knows the truth. Here's the truth you already feel but can't quite admit. You're not addicted to entertainment because it's good. You're addicted because it's safe, because it protects you from something deeper. From meaning, from discomfort, from you. But nothing grows in safety. No transformation, no rebellion, no awakening. So if you've ever wondered why your mind feels foggy, why you can't focus, why everything feels like it's speeding up while you're slowing down, maybe it's not you that's broken. Maybe it's the system designed to keep you distracted. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to burn something, not books, but illusions. Start with the illusion that you're awake. Because if you're always entertained, you're never present. And if you're never present, you're not alive. You're just being processed. So now, ask yourself, who are you without the noise? And more importantly, are you brave enough to find out? There's a terrifying elegance to a world where control no longer needs to announce itself. It doesn't scream, it doesn't demand, it seduces. And this is precisely what Ray Bradbury feared most. Not the rise of an oppressive government, but the fall of a thinking public. In Fahrenheit 451, the firemen didn't burst into homes under martial law. They were invited. Their burning of books wasn't seen as violence, but as maintenance, an emotional service to the public. Because books, as Captain Beatty explains, make people unhappy. They force conflict. They provoke thought. And in a society that worships comfort, thought is the enemy. This isn't just fiction anymore, it's strategy. Because when you pacify a people with distraction, you don't need to enslave them. You simply keep them entertained enough to forget they're already in chains. So ask yourself, when did we stop resisting and start consuming our own captivity? Take a look at modern life. Notifications flood your attention before you even open your eyes. Content is no longer watched, it's injected. You scroll until your thumbs go numb, binge until time dissolves. You are surrounded by voices, none of which are your own. And the worst part? It doesn't feel forced. It feels normal. It feels necessary. That's the horror Bradbury foresaw. A society so sedated by surface pleasures, it forgets to question anything deeper. He knew the apocalypse wouldn't come with fire, it would come with comfort. And now you understand the title. Entertainment is the new slavery, because what is slavery if not the complete surrender of one's autonomy? Not all prisons have walls, some have algorithms. And the chains? They're made of convenience. Why read a book when you can get the summary in 60 seconds? Why sit with discomfort when you can swipe it away? Why wrestle with meaning when distraction is always one tap away? Bradbury's world is here, but even he couldn't have predicted how seductive the trap would become. In Fahrenheit 451, people weren't forced to stop reading. They chose to stop, because books made them feel, think, doubt. And when society is addicted to ease, those things become threats. Which brings us to the central psychological question of this block. What does entertainment do to the mind that silence once protected? The human brain is not built for constant stimulation. It was never meant to process infinite information, never designed to hold 1,000 opinions in a single scroll. Silence once gave rise to reflection. Stillness once created space for identity. But now every second of quiet is filled before it even arrives. Bradbury warned us what this would do to the soul. "We need not to be let alone," he wrote. "We need to be really bothered once in a while. How long is it since you were really bothered? About something important? About something real? That's the rub. The world has given you everything except the ability to feel deeply, because depth is dangerous. It leads to awareness. Awareness leads to rebellion, and rebellion doesn't sell. So instead we anesthetize. We consume emotion rather than feel it. We watch revolutions in documentaries, but never revolt ourselves. We empathize with fictional characters more than we engage with the real suffering outside our door. Why? Because fiction gives us the illusion of meaning without the weight of consequence. Just like Mildred's TV Family, we construct emotional simulations so we can avoid actual responsibility. And here's where it becomes existential. When your emotions are outsourced to screens, what's left of your inner life? The answer is chilling, a void, a silence, but not the powerful silence of meditation or contemplation. No, a sterile, hollow silence, the silence of a self that was never truly formed. Because to form a self, you need friction, you need struggle, you need solitude. And entertainment in its current form robs you of all three. It's not just about movies or music or games. It's about the system that trains you to flee from every opportunity for insight. You are not watching content. You are being conditioned. Your pleasure is not a gift, it's a leash. Every scroll teaches your nervous system to crave ease. Every autoplay dulls your resistance. Every moment you numb yourself from boredom is a moment you lose your capacity for deep thought. But here's the twist. Bradbury didn't hate technology. He hated the way it was used to avoid life. He believed that technology could be beautiful if it served the soul, not replaced it. But we didn't choose that path. We chose speed over stillness, convenience over conscience, distraction over discomfort. And the result? A society of consumers without convictions. So here's the gut punch. You are not being distracted from life. You are being distracted from realizing that you're not truly alive. Because true life is uncomfortable. It demands attention. It confronts you. It forces you to sit with your flaws, your fears, your forgotten dreams. That's why the system gives you noise, to drown the call of your own awakening. Bradbury knew that rebellion starts in the mind. That's why the first thing any oppressive system must destroy is imagination. Not through violence, but through replacement. Replace curiosity with opinion. Replace wonder with spectacle. Replace depth with volume. And you get exactly what Fahrenheit 451 described. A society where no one is forbidden to think. They simply forget how. Now here's the invitation. Reclaim your silence. Not the empty silence of indifference, but the sacred silence of rebellion. The silence that listens, that questions, that waits, that remembers what it means to be human. Because the most revolutionary act today is not to shout. It's to unplug, to stare at the wall in boredom and let your mind come alive again, to read slowly, to feel deeply, to think dangerously. And in that silence, you may hear something you've forgotten, your own voice, the one that existed before you were marketed to, before you were conditioned to perform, before you were taught that comfort is the highest good. You are not meant to be entertained, you are meant to be awakened. So the next time you find yourself reaching for a screen out of habit, stop and ask, what pain am I avoiding? What truth have I silenced? What slavery have I mistaken for freedom? Because Bradbury wasn't writing science fiction, he was writing your obituary, unless you choose otherwise. The most terrifying form of control is the one that makes you laugh while you're being shackled. Ray Bradbury understood that a society doesn't collapse when it's attacked from the outside. It collapses when the soul of its people is slowly dissolved, through comfort, through pleasure, through entertainment. And the final stage of that collapse, when people not only accept their slavery, but celebrate it. This is not a metaphor, it's reality. Right now, the highest paid companies on earth are not the ones feeding you, physically, spiritually, or intellectually. They are the ones feeding your attention. They monetize your gaze. They harvest your boredom. You're not the customer, you are the product. And this raises the final haunting question: what happens when the population becomes complicit in their own mental imprisonment? Look around, see the crowds cheering for new distractions. Notice how every app, every platform, every device fights not for your money, but for your time. Because time is the new battlefield, and the war is being waged in seconds, in scrolls, in clicks. You're not being captured by force, you're being captured by habit. But here's where the psychological trap tightens. You start to believe you're choosing it. And once that illusion takes hold, you don't just comply. You defend the system that enslaves you, just like Mildred defended her family of TV walls in Fahrenheit 451. She wasn't brainwashed by propaganda. She was pacified by pleasure. And when confronted with truth, she didn't break down, she doubled down. This is what makes Bradbury's vision so devastatingly real. He understood that the future wouldn't be shaped by tyrants shouting orders, but by consumers begging for entertainment. Not oppression by brutality, but oppression by seduction. And so we return to the fire. Not the fire of rebellion, but the fire of forgetting. In Fahrenheit 451, Montag, the book's protagonist, awakens not because someone saves him, but because something snaps. A crack in the illusion. A moment of unbearable clarity, the sound of silence, the emptiness behind his wife's eyes, the meaningless deaths, the books, the words, the soul crying out from beneath the layers of noise. And when he begins to listen, the fire shifts. It stops being destructive. It becomes purifying. That's when he runs. Ask yourself, what would make you run? What would it take to break your loyalty to the noise? Because here's the most twisted part of modern entertainment. It mimics meaning. It gives you characters to care about, ideas to discuss, dramas to follow. You feel emotionally involved, but you never do anything. You never move, never act, never rebel. Your emotions are used up in fiction, so you have nothing left for reality. Bradbury predicted this perfectly. He warned that emotion without action becomes decay. That feeling without thinking becomes manipulation. And that's the core of your modern slavery. You are emotionally overstimulated and intellectually starved. So you keep watching, you keep scrolling, you keep laughing while the fire burns beneath you. And yet, within all this noise, there remains one final threat to the system, one last danger that no algorithm can neutralize, one act that defies every form of modern control: stillness. Stillness terrifies the machine because it creates a space where thought can reawaken, where conscience can whisper, where identity can begin to rebuild itself. That's why your devices scream when you try to disconnect. That's why your nervous system revolts in silence. You've been conditioned to fear stillness because that's where your true mind waits. So I'll ask you again, who are you without the noise? Who do you become when you choose silence? Not as escape, but as rebellion. Stillness is the beginning of revolt. It's the first brick thrown, not at a window, but at the illusion. And when you truly stop, truly look, truly listen, you begin to see the bars around your mind. The bar of passive consumption, the bar of emotional dependency, the bar of convenience over meaning. And in that moment, you are faced with a choice: return to comfort or burn it. Let Bradbury's words ring in your ears. There must be something in books, something we can't imagine, to make a woman stay in a burning house. Do you understand the gravity of that image? A woman so unwilling to live without meaning, without soul, that she chose flames over silence. Would you? Or have you already? Because here's the final truth Bradbury wanted you to feel, not just understand. If you do not burn for something real, you will be burned by something false. Every moment you spend passively consuming is a moment you could have been creating. Every hour you give to entertainment is an hour you could have used to awaken, and every day you live half asleep is a day that someone else profits from your sedation. And the real question remains, will you stay distracted, or will you become dangerous? Because if you felt something stirring during this video, if something inside you has whispered, "Wake up," then Bradbury's fire still burns. And maybe it's time you let it burn everything that's not you. Thank you for watching. If this has moved something in you, don't just like it, live it. Reflect, retreat, resist. And when you're ready, read, because the revolution won't be televised. It will be written.